Greetings, everybody, and welcome to World of Monsters. Today, we'll be talking about what makes a monster scary. We're going to have Chris share first.
In my opinion, the primal reason for why a monster would be scary is how dangerous it is to a regular human. At least that's what most of our viewers are, I think. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. Even if it's ugly looking and creepy, as you mentioned, if it isn't outright dangerous or doesn't have any kind of hidden type of danger that one should know and look out for, I wouldn't really call it scary. Unnerving, but not scary. So I believe that the fundamental reason for fear is to have something to actually fear. As at very least, that's what my rationale is. As of course, there is irrational fear, but it's kind of beyond the scope of our exact topic.
Do you have any particular examples that triggered you in the past or in the more recent past?
In the past, when I was a wee little rat, I had a very particular fear of zombies, which I have technically outgrown because it depends on the zombie. Seeing the Walking Dead with the flesh coming off of them, ceaselessly going after you, that was terrifying to me for some reason. I mean, it is technically still terrifying, but now having consumed more media and grown, so to say, they are relatively easy to handle. The monster I grew to fear most after zombies was a fan favorite from the Doctor Who franchise, namely the Weeping Angels. The whole point of that episode is that whenever you're not looking at an angel and they're lightning fast, so even if you just blink, they can end you in an instant. So hence why it's being called Don't Blink.
And if anybody doesn't know or is not aware, especially of the Weeping Angels of Doctor Who, it's a great monster, and I have done a in-depth video on the origins of the Weeping Angels. If you're not sure quite what we're speaking of, take a note of that to check that out later.
Your origin of the Weeping Angels is a phenomenal video. Among the more excellent ones you've made, so I do highly recommend to everyone. Though in regards to what is, in my opinion, the scariest monster, bar any cosmic horror stuff that we can't really explain, for me, I have to say that is the classic The Thing. In terms of it being a xenomorphic creature that can obtain the traits of other beings, emulate them, and become essentially a copy of them, while also demorphing the body into various predatory means of doing so. It is absolutely dangerous because it can near instantly kill you. It is exceptionally effective at what it does because it can blend in and become anyone, from a measly dog to a person, mimicking them down to perfection. You wouldn't really be able to know if the thing is actually close by or right next to you. And also when it actually engages its predatory form, it just becomes this very heavily mutated, just unnatural, horribly morphed being. And it is disgusting, creepy, effective, and peak of all, dangerous. In addition to the active physical threat that it offers, it is the fact of trying to guess where it is, who might it be. That is also existential dread that can affect you on a physical level as well. For me, The Thing is the scariest monster because it checks all the points I have about what makes a monster scary.
Okay, we'll see when I get into my shares also what kind of things we overlap on there, Chris, because there certainly are some. I'll go ahead and spice this up even more, and then we'll get to everybody else. I wanted to categorize this into two categories, and that is relatable and, well, the opposite, what makes it unrelatable. So actually both things, I believe, can make the monster the scariest, being relatable and unrelatable. So let's start with a relatable. Relatable, we connect it to our own human intelligence, our own human awareness. And with that, we don't know, but we have an idea of what it is capable of, what potential it has. And that's the scary part too, because with people and psychopaths, we are somewhat aware of, because of movies and news or personal experience, what they are capable of. And then putting that onto a monster that has also alien to us features makes that even more intriguingly frightening. Something that I'd like to draw attention to, for example, is from the movie Signs. Signs had your typical alien bodies, shapes, forms,
Mm-hmm.
but what made it frightening, especially like the scene, is because it is humanoid. If it's something more like dog-shaped, then we will relate it to beasts, and then we don't have that frightening intellectual factor. But because we see something on two legs that's smooth-bodied, we're going to relate it to us and thinking this thing must be intelligent and probably not living in the woods, but from somewhere further away or somewhere more intricate. And that's frightening. And that's why this scene was probably one of the more frightening ones in the movie. And they did hype it up to be the way they directed it. And then this relates, of course, to our good old Greys. Now,
The classic.
yes, and I know this triggers some people, some not, but I also think it's the era you grew up in and what you were influenced by in media and stuff like that. For me, growing up, this and reading the different stories became quite up there as far as frightening goes, the gray aliens. And again, why the gray aliens? Because of their appearance and what we can gather or hypothesize about them being these more intelligent beings. A more intelligent being means potentially more intelligent or sophisticated or worse, torture if it is particularly evil. But I also wanted to talk about Predator as far as that, because here we have the more alien to us, unrelatable to us face, but the point is it still has a humanoid body, which is relatable to us, but then a completely different face to ours. And that is revealed in the movie, of course, later as he takes off his helmet. But imagine when these movies first came out and you were in the theater watching this. Well, it was probably spoiled in commercials anyway, but the first time you had that reveal, it probably was quite a moment, the revealment of that scary, crazy, freaky, very alien, or to some maybe beautiful face of the Yuwatya or Yapja.
Yauja.
Phobias are also relatable to us personally. People have different fears of water depths or just depths in general. Many dots or huge number of maggots, something like that, crawling, all moving at the same time. Or spiders or certain animals. And so the other one, and that is the face hugger of Alien. I think this is something that can certainly trigger people that have a phobia for spiders and creepy crawly critters, especially since this thing is fast and the way it looks and then what it can do to your face or to you in general. A further away relatability, but speaking to your phobia can make a monster particularly frightening. Moving on now from relatable to the opposite. How can the opposite also work? Well, it just does. And the mixture of both works very well too. We'll get to that at the ending here. So in Unrelatable, we have this great example of the alien. We have parts that are relatable here, but parts that are very not relatable. I would say particularly the biomechanical biology, but also the head itself. This one is already in a frightening pose, but if you remember the first Alien movie where the alien is shown, I think it's one of the first scenes with the alien, and it's just sort of going up slowly with its mouth closed and just quiet. It shows a certain stealth and stalker behavior to it. Also with the head, relating to what I forgot to mention with the gray aliens, the big black dome. That was always the frightening thing about the gray aliens to me too, and a lot of people. Those renditions made with them with the glossy eyes, and that would be frightening to me because when it would appear in your room, it's this lanky thing, but it has all this control over you, and it appeared without your power, your know-how. That's already a powerful thing, and then these eyes glossing around you, and you don't know what they're looking at. It feels like they're looking everywhere, and sometimes it feels like they're looking into your soul because that deep blackness of them, which is very relatable and unrelatable with the xenomorph. Those features, and then this thing not being just, crazy running around like a feral animal, but rather being stealthy and methodic with its approach to finding you and attacking you. One of my scariest monster movie moments, or movie in all moments, for the longest time was a scene from Fire in the Sky. Direction behind it was genius, the filming, although it wasn't along the lines of the original experiencer's description of the experience, because Fire in the Sky was based on a true story of Travis Walton, who disappeared for 5 days. They made it scarier, and that's again, I played media and these old UFO books and new ones for making the Greys as frightening as they were for me growing up, and I think for a lot of people.
When I last spoke with you and said that I didn't really find them scary, I was a naive child at the time, because I realized the Greys, at their least, the least that they can be, is humans, but smarter with superior technology. That is already
Exactly.
reason to find them terrifying enough. Because I
Yes,
know
exactly.
what bat do things humans can do. Even if we go down the primitive scale, chimpanzees, one of our closest relatives, we know what they can do. And so we're just a step above them with bigger brains and more technology. So imagine, literally, just take a regular human in terms of mentality and capabilities, but give it more brain and more technology to enact its capabilities. That is already terrifying enough.
Whatever they are, even if they're robots, if they're androids, future humans, that doesn't matter. The point is they violated your privacy if they appear in your room or something like that. With that ability, you don't know what else they're able to do, and that makes it unrelatable in that factor because it's the knowingness that's scary. This scene where they take him down, they strip him down, and then start these weird tests. Again, Hollywood, but this environment and the directing in this movie is so good. And I did want to mention the thing because of the relatable, but how much relatable, it's just our anatomy, but then it's so twisted and contorted that it becomes very unrelatable comparing to what we know. The only thing we can compare this to is diseases and different disorders and things like that that can really mess up a person's anatomy. And so seeing that being done, but not being at a moment of disadvantage, but rather advantage and becoming a creature of sorts that is even more dangerous, that is very frightening. Seeing that in real life would be extremely frightening, I would imagine. Before I even saw Fire in the Sky, what spoke to me as very frightening movie experience with monsters for the longest time, I am known as having the video with all the werewolf movies ever made. And I still don't know where I saw this werewolf transformation. What I'm thinking is this was probably werewolf TV show from the 80s, I think, which I heard good things about. But it was a guy transforming into a werewolf in front of the car's headlights. And it was one of those nasty transformations, not like these new clean ones, or these shifts, whatever. No, it was bloody and body horror, and he was pulling himself out. And me seeing this as a 5-year-old kid, that stuck with me for years. And these days, I don't find werewolf transformations really that scary at all. I've seen so many too. Although if I saw one in real life, that's a whole different movie thing. But particularly in movies, it doesn't do much for me. But that first scene, and look how much I've talked about werewolves by now. That's kind of funny how that all relates. What's the thing with werewolf transformations is the unrelatability of that situation, because how the hell would that be possible?
You can clearly see what it's becoming. You have the creepy aspect of it, of the unsettlingness of seeing the human body being broken down like
Yes,
so. And initially, you see what it's becoming. That is clearly ringing the danger bell in your cerebellum.
exactly.
So it combines them all together as well.
Again, it's very relatable to the thing, right? It's a body horror moment, and that's the beauty of werewolf horror. It has a tinge of body horror and then the whole werewolf monster. So nice mix there. But that's the thing, when you see something contorting like that from something relatable that human, and then going into this form that's alien, and then that becoming a dangerous form, that's freaky. Also, I would like to mention moments and actions that I think can make monsters very scary. And I think what does this beautifully is right here, Hereditary. There is a moment in the movie where the person that's not quite normal human is doing actions that are a bit extreme. Hereditary did a couple scenes that were, as far as that being a bit frightening. As far as relatability and relatability kind of blends together, I mean, in all of these monsters, it does to a degree, but I think a great one that was mentioned was Zombies by Chris. Zombie movies just attract me more than so many other horrors, and it's because it's very imaginable. It's very relatable and unrelatable. Like when we had the pandemic, and then imagining, people starting to get this virus and starting to walk around or being really aggressive, now talking about those infected movies. That's a very imaginable possibility. But then the unrelatability of it is what is making them act like that. If I kill them, is it ethical? Would they never be able to return back to normal? Who were they when they were normal? And all that stuff that in this face that should be relatable, there's so much depth and unrelatability that makes it such a frightening and intriguing topic. Oh, here's another thing. Siren head. It creates a sound that we know is bad news, the siren, which could either be a natural disaster or war, but then it's this walking entity. So it's a mix of both of these factors, known and really unknown, because it's on this thing walking around. Is it a living being? Is it a cyborg? What the hell is it? That's a great crisscross of relatable and unrelatable in the dark facets, and that's why it's a pretty cool creation out there. Last thing I wanted to mention along the lines of relatability, more so what Chris mentioned too with the danger, is weaponization, meaning we see the pointy teeth, we see claws, we see a tail with spines, we see a weapon. It makes that automatically much more scary because it's an alien thing. You don't know what it's going to do, but it has a bunch of pointy bits and fiery bits and electrical bits that could really, really hurt you and torture you and kill you. Now we're going to see what you guys say in Discord.
And we do have quite a bit of input.
Here's Dandy posting this image, mocking our fear of the very terrifying grays. Seems like a little reiteration of kind of what I was mentioning with relatabilities and not knowing of its potential. That potential and seeing a possibility of a really bad potential makes something very scary. It's not just not knowing and being in the dark. Now you have hints of bad things, and then that darkness to stray your mind into negative thoughts. Got to make a shout out to the original Fly. It's
Absolutely.
old, it's corny nowadays, it's black and white.
But its effects were phenomenal.
The ending of The Fly really does it, especially if you have arachnophobia, and the sound of the fly's voice and all that made me think when people first saw The Fly in the movie theater, before we have all this CGI and awesome practical effects, the ending of the old black and white The Fly, it really twisted people up. So as far as scary movies, let's shout out The Fly, the new one and the old one. Huzzah
Absolutely.
to that. I'd say what would be very scary, more scary than The Thing and all that, is if they made a movie on Dead Space. If you guys love Dead Space, do watch the animated one. I'm pretty sure you can find it for free, maybe on YouTube. But if you take it to live action, Dead Space would be one of the freakiest, crazy things. And to me and Chris speaking, as far as creepy and scariness would be, because it has the zombie-ish a factor and the body horror.
One thing I would love to see them, just because in the games you do need to have the enemies stop moving. So after you chop off all their limbs, they kind of stop moving, even though they're technically still alive. But in film, it would be just absolutely terrific to see that. The main character chops off all the limbs, but the dismembered torso is still trying to get its way to you, to actually put the lore front and center, to make it more visible than it is, and to ungamify it, so to say. Oh, that would be tasty.
The first time we see Gray in Communion freaked me out. Thank you, Lancer, on that. Communion does weird things, and it's relatable to Fire in the Sky, what happens in that movie. Robert again said Fire in the Sky did it to a lot of people, not only your teacher. They nailed that one. Thank you to everybody on Discord that came in there and participated. Thank you to everybody on YouTube that came in and participated. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.
Stay monstrous, my friends. Arrivederci.